Thank you. A very warm welcome to this live stream of William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience. We are at the iconic Balham in Bedford in Balham. I've got my B's the wrong way around there. And we've been here today for a whole day of poetry and celebration. It's our kind of back-to-school gig for those of us for whom the year starts in September and not in January. And it's been an absolute delight. We started off this morning with a masterclass on form from Glyn Maxwell. It was absolutely fabulous. We've then had a reading at 5 o'clock from 5 of Live Cannon's poets, sharing new work and old. And it was incredible to bring together 5 of the poets that we publish and hear them read together. If you missed that, don't worry, you missed the live stream at 5, but we will put it on our YouTube channel caption later in the week, so there'll be an opportunity to watch it back. But you're here now, tuning in at 8 o'clock, for a reading from the Live Cannon Ensemble from William Blake's Songs of Innocence and Experience. And the Live Cannon Ensemble celebrate their 15th birthday this year, since the very first performance that they did of the Metaphysical Poets at Greenwich Theatre 15 years ago, which was a series where we basically performed the back canon of English poetry, whatever that might mean, from memory over the course of 8 different performances, so working through metaphysicals, romantics, pre-Raphaelites, war poets, really to understand what that meant, what it meant to know poems, what it meant to perform poems, what it meant to engage with audiences in that way. At a time when spoken word was so exciting and dynamic, we experienced lots of poetry orally, but we tended to experience the back canon on the page. It felt really interesting to kind of draw lines between those things and what it meant to be able to experience poems written 500 years ago as though they'd just been written and someone had come on stage to gig them. And that experiment, which was just meant to be a series of 8 performances, called Live Cannon, because that's what it was the canon and it was live, turned into our organisation, which now celebrates its 15th birthday, which has become also a publishing house and an education department, all kinds of other things going on. But at the heart of Live Cannon is gathering to listen to poems. And all through the lockdown, we were reading lots of material, and people kept suggesting that we read Blake. And I had a theory that mumbling your way through Blake on Zoom was probably a really bad idea. I think Blake takes a lot of breath. All that rhyming joy in the Songs of Innocence has to come from somewhere, and it's quite hard to voice that, to really voice it, and to find the rhythm and the metre of that without a bit of space around you. So we're here tonight in an absolutely beautiful auditorium. If you're at home, you can't see, but it's a big round space. It's like being in the Globe, but there's a big glitter ball above us rather than the stars of the sky. And it's a real privilege to be here and to be able to think about releasing Blake's text into this space. I think this is the beginning of Live Cannon's engagement with the Songs of Innocence Experience. We're playing around. A long time, 10 years ago, we commissioned some music settings of some of the poems, including a very, very memorable setting by Alice Barclay that was an extraordinary thing to get to perform. And we're just starting to think how we might come back to Blake a decade later and what that might mean. So what's going to happen tonight is that the brilliant Leon, Jim and Rosie from Live Cannon are going to read some of the Songs of Innocence and then some of the Songs of Experience. Now, if you're not sure what that means, when Blake first of all, he published the Songs of Innocence, and then he published the Songs of Innocence and Experience together. And it's 2 sets of poems which speak to 2 very different sides of human experience. The innocence of the newborn, of coming into the world, of coming into the light, of experiencing things for the first time, and then what we learn as we travel through life. And some of the poems are paired, so some poems have the same titles in the 2 halves. You could pair the poems, and you could do a Song of Innocence and then a Song of Experience and do that, but what we've done is dealt with the material the way Blake did, which was to put all the Songs of Innocence first and then all the Songs of Experience. When he first published the book, they were also accompanied by illustrations. So each poem had an illustration with it, and the 2 are absolutely fused together. If you've got a copy, you might like to look at the illustrations as you're listening, or if you're watching this back, you might like to do that, because there's something incredibly exciting about the way those 2 things mould together. Almost all of the Songs of Innocence and Experience have been set to music in some way, and in very different ways, from rock and pop settings to iconic settings of Blake for choirs. And we had a playlist that we made that we were playing a little bit of before this gig, and we'll play a bit more of on the way out. We can't play it to you at home because that doesn't quite work with permissions and PRS and all kinds of other things. But if you're interested, we can send you the link to the Spotify playlist of settings of Blake. But tonight we're just going to honour the text, and we're going to hear some of the poems and see what that experience is, and hear the very different colour of the Songs of Innocence to the Songs of Experience, to hear what form and metre are doing in that telling. We've been talking about that a lot today, and what that tone is of their journey. We've cut some of them out for length. We've cut more of the Songs of Innocence out than the Songs of Experience, so the first half's a bit shorter. I don't know whether that says something about me, that I was more interested in the darker and more problematic poems than the simple and innocent ones. Possibly it does. I think, also, being completely honest, that a lot more of the sort of Blake big hitters that you will recognise, the ones that come up in, those kind of Nation's 100 favourite poems lists, come from the Songs of Experience, maybe because they are darker and more complex, but I think that's why we've ended up with more of the second half still in than the first half. But without further ado, I will get out the way, and I will leave you in the capable and brilliant hands of Leon, Jim and Rosie.
Piping down the valleys wild, piping songs of pleasant glee. On a cloud I saw a child, and he laughing said to me,
"Pipe a song about a lamb."
So I piped with merry cheer.
"Piper, pipe that song again."
So I piped, he wept to hear.
"Drop thy pipe, thy happy pipe. Sing thy songs of happy cheer."
So I sung the same again, while he wept with joy to hear.
"Piper, sit thee down and write in a book that all may read."
So he vanished from my sight, and I plucked a hollow reed, and I made a rural pen, and I stained the water clear, and I wrote my happy songs every child made joy to hear.
The Shepherd. How sweet is the shepherd's sweet lot! From the morn to the evening he strays. He shall follow his sheep all the day, and his tongue shall be filled with praise. For he hears the lamb's innocent call, and he hears the ewes' tender reply. He is watchful while they are in peace, for they know when their shepherd is nigh.
The echoing green. The sun does arise and make happy the skies.
The merry bells ring to welcome the spring.
The skylark and thrush, the birds of the bush, sing louder around to the bell's cheerful sound, while our sport shall be seen on the echoing green.
Old John, with white hair, does laugh away care, sitting under the oak among the old folk. They laugh at our play, and soon they all say,
Such were the joys when we all, girls and boys, in our youth time were seen on the echoing green.
Till the little ones, weary, no more can be merry. The sun does descend and our sports have an end. Round the laps of their mothers, many sisters and brothers, like birds in their nest, are ready for rest.
And sport no more seen on the darkening green.
The lamb. Little lamb, who made thee?
Dost thou know who made thee?
Gave thee life and bid thee feed by the stream and o'er the mead?
gave thee clothing of delight, softest clothing, woolly, bright.
Gave thee such a tender voice, making all the vales rejoice.
Little lamb, who made thee? Dost thou know who made thee?
Little lamb, I'll tell thee.
Little lamb, I'll tell thee.
He is called by thy name, for he calls himself a lamb.
He is meek and he is mild. He became a little child.
I a child, and thou a lamb. We are called by his name.
Little lamb, God bless thee.
Little lamb, God bless thee.
Night. The sun descending in the west, the evening star does shine. The birds are silent in their nest, and I must seek for mine. The moon, like a flower in heaven's high bower, with silent delight sits and smiles on the night. Farewell, green fields and happy groves, where flocks have took delight, where lambs have nibbled, silent moves the feet of angels bright. Unseen, they pour blessing and joy without ceasing on each bud and blossom and each sleeping bosom. They look in every thoughtless nest where birds are covered warm. They visit caves of every beast to keep them all from harm. If they see any weeping that should have been sleeping, they pour sleep on their head and sit down by their bed. When wolves and tigers howl for prey, they pitying stand and weep, seeking to drive their thirst away and keep them from the sheep. But if they rush dreadful, the angels most heedful receive each mild spirit new worlds to inherit. And there the lion's ruddy eyes shall flow with tears of gold, and pitying the tender cries and walking round the fold, saying, wrath by his meekness and by his health sickness is driven away from our immortal day. And now beside thee, bleating lamb, I can lie down and sleep, or think on him who bore thy name, graze after thee and weep. For washed in life's river, my bright mane forever shall shine like the gold as I guard o'er the fold.
Nurse's Song. When voices of children are heard on the green, and laughing is heard on the hill, my heart is at rest within my breast, and everything else is still. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise. Come, come, leave off play, and let us away, till the morning appears in the skies. No, no, let us play, for it is yet day, and we cannot go to sleep. Besides, in the sky the little birds fly, and the hills are all covered with sheep. Well, well, go and play till the light fades away, and then go home to bed. The little ones leaped and shouted and laughed, and all the hills echoed.
A dream. Once a dream did weave a shade o'er my angel-guarded bed, that an emmet lost its way, where on grass methought I lay, troubled, wildered, and forlorn, dark, benighted, travel-worn. Over many a tangled spray, all heartbroke, I heard her say, "Oh, my children, do they cry? Do they hear their father sigh? Now they look abroad to see, now return and weep for me. Pitying, I dropped a tear. But I saw a glowworm near, who replied, "What wailing wight calls the watchman of the night? I am set to light the ground, while the beetle goes his round. Follow now the beetle's hum, little wanderer, hie thee home."
On another's sorrow. Can I see another's woe and not be in sorrow too? Can I see another's grief and not seek for kind relief? Can I see a falling tear and not feel my sorrow's share? Can a father see his child weep nor be with sorrow filled? Can a mother sit and hear an infant groan, an infant fear? No, no, never can it be. Never, never can it be. And can he who smiles on all hear the wren with sorrows small? Hears the small bird's grief and care, hear the woes that infants bear, and not sit beside the nest, pouring pity in their breast, and not sit in the cradle, and not sit the cradle near, weeping tear on infant's tear? And not sit both night and day, wiping all our tears away? Oh no, never can it be. Never, never can it be. He doth give his joy to all. He becomes an infant small. He becomes a man of woe. He doth feel the sorrow too. Oh, he gives to us his joy, that our grief he may destroy. Excuse me. Think not thou canst sigh a sigh and think. I might just roll back on that a little bit, sorry. He doth give his joy to all. He becomes an infant small. He becomes a man of woe. He doth feel the sorrow too. Think not thou canst sigh a sigh, and thy Maker is not by. Think not thou canst weep a tear, and thy Maker is not near. Oh, he gives to us his joy, that our grief he may destroy. Till our grief is fled and gone, he doth sit by us and moan.
Thank you. I'm jumping up midway, partly to give them a moment of pause. But we've come to the end of a selection from the Songs of Innocence, and you can certainly hear the quality of those, which is about rhythm, about meter, about joy, about breath. There are a lot of exclamations in the poems, and a lot of it tries to recreate the kind of immediate innocence of a moment of birth, or of lack of complication. If you're interested in reading them, there are more poems in the Songs of Innocence, including a number of stories about lost children being miraculously found by God, and some that we might now find quite morally dubious about how the crying chimney sweep child is actually okay, because it'll be all right in heaven. The flavour of that leads us towards the second section, which we're entering into now, which is the Songs of Experience. You'll notice that they get darker, that rhythmically they get more complex and less regular, and that we start to ask different questions. We felt the poem that we ended on there, that Leon read, felt like it started to ask the questions that tipped us towards the second part of the programme. What does it mean to watch suffering? What does it mean to empathise? And that took us through to what we're going to explore next. Over to you guys.
Hear the voice of the bard, who present, past, and future sees,
whose ears have heard the holy word that walked among the ancient trees,
calling the lapsed soul and weeping in the evening dew.
that might control the starry pole and fallen light renew.
O earth, return.
Arise from out the dewy grass.
Night is worn, and the morn rises from the slumberous mass.
Turn away no more. Why wilt thou turn away?
The starry floor, the watery shore, is given thee till the break of day.
Earth's answer. Earth raised up her heads from the darkness, dread and drear. Her light fled, stony, dread, and her locks covered with grey despair.
Prisoned on watery shore, starry jealousy doth keep my den. Cold and hoar, weeping o'er, I hear the father of the ancient men. Selfish father of men, cruel, jealous, selfish fear, can delight, chained in night, the virgins of youth and morning bear. Does spring hide its joy when buds and blossoms grow? Does the sower sow by night, or the ploughman in darkness plough? Break this heavy chain that does freeze my bones around. Selfish, vain, eternal bane, that free love with bondage bound.
The clod and the pebble. Love seeketh not itself to please, nor for itself have any care, but for another gives its ease and builds a heaven in hell's despair.
So sung a little clod of clay, trodden with the cattle's feet. But a pebble of the brook warbled out these meters meet.
Love seeketh only self to please, to bind another to its delight, joys in another's loss of ease, and builds a hell in heaven's despite.
Holy Thursday. Is this a holy thing to see in a rich and fruitful land? Babes reduced to misery, fed with cold and usurious hand. Is that trembling cry a song? Can it be a song of joy? And so many children poor. It is a land of poverty. And their sun does never shine, and their fields are bleak and bare, and their ways are filled with thorns. It is eternal winter there. For where'er the sun does shine, and where'er the rain does fall, babe can never hunger there, nor poverty the mind appall.
The little girl lost. In futurity, I prophesy that the earth from sleep, grave the sentence deep, shall arise and seek for her maker meek, and the desert wild become a garden mild. In the southern clime, where the summer's prime never fades away, lovely Lyca lay. 7 summers old, lovely Lyca told. She had wandered long, hearing wild birds' song. Sweet sleep, come to me, underneath this tree. Do father, mother weep? Where can Lyca sleep? Lost in the desert wild is your little child. How can Lyca sleep if her mother weep? If her heart does ache, then let Lyca wake. If my mother sleep, Lyca shall not weep. Frowning, frowning night, o'er this desert bright, let thy moon arise while I close my eyes. Sleeping Lyca lay, while the beasts of prey come from caverns deep. Viewed the maid asleep. The kingly lion stood, and the virgin viewed. Then he gambolled round o'er the hallowed ground. Leopards, tigers play round her as she lay, while the lion old bowed his mane of gold. And her bosom lick, and upon her neck, from his eyes of flame, ruby tears there came. While the lioness loosed her slender dress, and naked they conveyed to caves the sleeping maid.
The little girl found. All the night in woe, Lyca's parents go over valleys deep while the deserts weep. Tired and woe begone, hoarse with making moan, arm in arm, 7 days they traced the desert ways. 7 nights they sleep among the shadows deep, and dream they see their child starved in desert wild. Pale through pathless ways, the fancied image strays, famished, weeping, weak, with hollow, piteous shriek. Rising from unrest, the trembling woman pressed with feet of weary woe, she could no further go. In his arms he bore her, armed with sorrow sore, till before their way a couching lion lay. Turning back was vain. Soon his heavy mane bore them to the ground. Then he stalked around, smelling to his prey, but their fears allay when he licks their hands, and silent by them stands. They look upon his eyes, filled with deep surprise, and wondering behold a spirit armed in gold. On his head a crown, on his shoulders down flowed his golden hair. Gone was all their care. Follow me, he said, weep not for the maid. In my palace deep, Lyca lies asleep. Then they followed where the vision led, and saw their sleeping child among tigers wild. To this day they dwell in a lonely dell, nor fear the wolvish howl, nor the lion's growl.
Nurse's Song. When the voices of children are heard on the green, and whisperings are in the dale, the days of my youth rise fresh in my mind. My face turns green and pale. Then come home, my children, the sun is gone down, and the dews of night arise. Your spring and your day are wasted in play, and your winter and night in disguise.
The sick rose. O rose, thou art sick. The invisible worm that flies in the night, in the howling storm, has found out thy bed of crimson joy, and his dark, secret love does thy life destroy.
The fly. Little fly, thy summer's play my thoughtless hand has brushed away. Am not I a fly like thee? Or art not thou a man like me? For I dance and drink and sing till some blind hand shall brush my wing. If thought is life and strength and breath, and the want of thought is death, then am I a happy fly, if I live or if I die.
The tiger. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night.
What immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry?
In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes?
On what wings dare he aspire?
What the hand dare seize the fire?
And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart?
And when thy heart began to beat,
What dread hand and what dread feet?
What the hammer?
What the chain?
in what furnace was thy brain?
What the anvil?
What dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp?
When the stars threw down their spears,
And watered heaven with their tears?
Did he smile his work to see?
Did he who made the lamb make thee?
tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night,
What immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry?
My pretty rose tree. A flower was offered to me, such a flower as May never bore. But I said, I've a pretty rose tree, and I passed the sweet flower o'er. Then I went to my pretty rose tree to tend her by day and by night. But my rose turned away with jealousy, and her thorns were my only delight.
ah, sunflower, ah, sunflower, weary of time, who countest the steps of the sun, seeking after that sweet golden clime where the traveller's journey is done, where the youth pined away with desire, and the pale virgin shrouded in snow arise from their graves and aspire where my sunflower wishes to go.
The lily. The modest rose puts forth a thorn, the humble sheep a threatening horn, while the lily white shall in love delight. Nor a thorn nor a threat stain her beauty bright.
The Garden of Love. I went to the Garden of Love and saw what I had... I'll start again. I went to the Garden of Love and saw what I never had seen. A chapel was built in the midst where I used to play on the green. And the gates of this chapel were shut, and thou shalt not writ over the door. So I turned to the Garden of Love that so many sweet flowers bore. And I saw it was filled with graves and tombstones where flowers should be. And priests in black gowns were walking their rounds and binding with briars my joys and desires.
London. I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In the cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweeper's cry every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most, through midnight streets, I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the marriage hearse.
The human abstract. Pity would be no more if we did not make somebody poor.
And mercy no more could be if all were as happy as we.
And mutual fear brings peace.
Till the selfish loves increase, then cruelty knits a snare and spreads his baits with care.
He sits down with holy fears and waters the ground with tears.
Then humility takes its root underneath his foot. Soon spreads the dismal shade of mystery over his head. And the caterpillar and fly feed on the mystery.
And it bears the fruit of deceit, ruddy and sweet to eat. And the raven his nest has made in its thickest shade.
The gods of the earth and sea sought through nature to find this tree, but their search was all in vain. There grows one in the human brain.
Infant sorrow. My mother groaned, my father wept. Into the dangerous world I leapt, helpless, naked, piping loud, like a fiend hid in a cloud. Struggling in my father's hands, striving against my swaddling bands, bound and weary, I thought best to sulk upon my mother's breast.
A poison tree. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not. My wrath did grow. And I watered it in fears, night and morning with my tears. And I sunned it with smiles and with soft, deceitful wiles. And it grew both night and day, till it bore an apple bright. And my foe beheld it shine, and he knew that it was mine. And into my garden stole, when the night had veiled the pole. In the morning, glad I see my foe outstretched beneath the tree.
A divine image. Cruelty has a human heart, and jealousy a human face. Terror the human form divine, and secrecy the human dress. The human dress is forged iron. The human form is fiery forge. The human face a furnace sealed. The human heart its hungry gorge.
A cradle song. Sleep, sleep, beauty bright, dreaming in the joys of night.
Sleep, sleep, in thy sleep, little sorrows sit and weep.
Sweet babe, in thy face, soft desires I can trace.
Secret joys and secret smiles, little pretty infant wiles.
As thy softest limbs I feel, smiles as of the morning steal.
O'er thy cheek and o'er thy breast, where thy little heart doth rest.
Oh, the cunning wiles that creep in thy little heart asleep.
When thy little heart doth wake, then the dreadful light shall break.
The schoolboy. I love to rise in a summer morn, when the birds sing on every tree, the distant huntsman winds his horn, and the skylark sings with me. Oh, what sweet company! But to go to school in a summer morn, oh, it drives all joy away. Under a cruel eye outworn, the little ones spend the day in sighing and dismay. Ah, then at times I drooping sit and spend many an anxious hour, nor in my book can I take delight, nor sit in learning's bower worn through with the dreary shower. How can the bird that is born for joy sit in a cage and sing? How can a child, when fears annoy, but droop his tender wing and forget his youthful spring? O father and mother, if buds are nipped and blossoms blown away, and if the tender plants are stripped of their joy in the springing day by sorrow and care's dismay, how shall the summer arise in joy, or the summer fruits appear? Or how shall we gather what griefs destroy, or bless the mellowing year when the blasts of winter appear?
Now, this is the final poem that appears in Songs of Experience. And in fact, it was originally included as one of the Songs of Innocence. And Blake moved it to the second part, as it does seem to reflect this slightly uneasy mix of both, which is possibly the best place to end. This is called The Voice of the Ancient Bard.
Youth of delight, come hither and see the opening morn.
Image of truth, newborn.
Doubt is fled, and clouds of reason.
Dark disputes and artful teasing.
Folly is an endless maze.
Tangled roots perplex her ways.
How many have fallen there?
They stumble all night over bones of the dead.
And feel they know not what but care.
And wish to lead others when they should be led.
Thank you so much. Rosanna Frascona, Jim Scott, Leon Scott, not related to each other, though we do collect Scotts. We have a disproportionate number of them in the Live Canon Ensemble. Thank you so much for reading that for us. There's no better way to explore a set of poems, really, than to have the privilege of working on them with performers and then to share them with an audience. You learn so much more, I think, about it than you do sat with the book. So thank you. It's been an amazing day exploring those with you. We've had a brilliant day here at the Bedford. So a massive thank you to Becky, of course, who made it all possible, and to Richard, who's been looking after all things technical all day. We've had a great workshop, we've had a great reading, we've had a great performance this evening, and it's been great to be able to involve everybody. As you know, we are really committed to live streaming everything that we do. We were lucky enough to build a very lovely and wonderful audience during lockdown. One of the positive things that came out of that was engaging with audiences all over the world, and we're trying to make sure that we continue to make all of the work as accessible as possible wherever you are geographically. So thank you very much for tuning in and being with us. As you know, quite a few of the things that the Live Canon Ensemble have read have been by request of people who've said, oh, it'd be great if you could read this, or it'd be great if you could read that. So do keep the requests coming, and we do try and honour them and make things happen. So thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you to everyone who's watching here live. And we've had a poetry-filled Sunday, which is what all Sundays should be. And we said this was our sort of back-to-school event because lots of people are going back to school this week, like the reluctant schoolboy in the penultimate poem, or back to work, or whatever that might be. And no better way to ease into that than a Sunday spent filled with poems here at Bedford. So thank you very much to everyone who's been a part of it, and lots more to come throughout the autumn. Thank you very much.